I was listening to the interview with Max from back in July. I was re-listening to it, and I was like, I gotta be funnier than that motherfucker.
Oh, Max is he's a huh. What's the best word to describe Max? He's a Max.
I would call him a trip.
Attention, all authors, both new and experienced. We have an exciting announcement. Presenting Deadhead Reviews' first. Wait, did someone just hear that?
No.
Was that one of you guys?
No.
I guess
sure
you're.
not. Toothpick.
Jesus Christ. I swear I'm sober. All right, let me start. Sorry.
You have to say that every episode.
Huh?
I said you shouldn't have to say that every episode.
Yeah. I suck.
Attention all authors, both new and experienced. We have an exciting announcement. Presenting Deadhead Review's very first short story competition. The theme is horror in Hollywood. Horror stories set in and around the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Your story can take place during any period in Hollywood history, from the beginning days of silent black and white movies up to the modern era of big Hollywood blockbusters. Be creative. Cross-genre is welcome. We're looking for standalone, no pun intended, Paul, prose fiction, stories up to 4,000 words, no television, movie, play script treatments, novel, or novella extracts will be accepted. Patrick and I will be joining Elle Turpin, Cassie Daly, S.H. Cooper, and Rich Gerlach in acting as judges. Contest opens September 15th, and entries will be accepted all the way up to September 30th. Prizes include promotional packages, books, editing services, and even a chance to win a guest spot on Dead Headspace to promote your work. For more information or to submit, visit deadheadreviews.com and click on Content Submission. We can't wait to hear from you.
And then we're going to do the intro now. Welcome to Dead Headspace. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all other major platforms, including a new to us show, foreign platform. Forgive me if I mispronounce this. Ghana, it's India's largest streaming commercial service. And I'm, of course, your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hey, Patrick, actually, I was thinking you should do that one more time because you said Indian instead of India.
I did. Oh, my God.
If you're going to introduce us to an entirely new country, you should probably not fuck up the country's name.
Jesus Christ. Thinking of Max Booth too much.
I was thinking of Stephen Graham Jones. I just finished the Only Good Indians. I was like, is this a special streaming source for the res?
You could probably just take it from and, introducing new whatever and just tack the rest on.
No problem. I'm disappointed, Patrick. And all other major platforms, including a new to this show foreign platform, Ghana, India's largest streaming commercial service. I'm, of course, your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are joined by author, editor, and so much more, Paul Michael Anderson. How are you, sir?
I am still conscious, so that's a good start.
That is a great start. And Brennan actually has a question that he came up with to start the show.
Yeah, so Paul, usually we have a baseline question just to get everybody off on the same track, but I'm going to forgo that because I would like to know, if you were to go to a restaurant right now and you wanted to order a carbonated beverage, would you order a soda or would you order a pop?
Oh, fuck off. It's pop!
Okay. We gave you a shot, but, nice try. The answer is soda.
No, fuck you. I'm from Western PA, and it's pop. When Bracken and I were writing How We Broke together, and we were going through revision, he would write a section, then he would send it to me, I would rewrite it or polish it, and I would write a section, then I'd send it back to him. And we'd have running commentary in the comments, and we literally had like a 3 or 4 exchange war about pop versus soda, because I typed pop in the first draft. And he was like, the fuck is this? It's soda. And I'm like, fuck you. I'll fucking cut a bitch.
To be fair, me and Brandon are from the same state as him, Massachusetts. So, we have a bias as far as that goes. Now, You said Western. I know you're from Pittsburgh, but I'm pretty sure in Philly it's the opposite, soda. So I'm curious where the line's drawn.
In Pennsylvania, it's weird. If you talk to anyone in Western Pennsylvania, we always forget the Philly is a part of our state. We think it's like part of a Jersey. And I've talked to people from Philly,
Yeah.
and they always forget that Pittsburgh is part of Pennsylvania, and they think it's in fucking Ohio, like right beneath Cleveland. And that's just a worse insult than saying we're from Ohio. There is a very clear divide between the two sides of the state, and people are ride or die with the sides of the state. I mean, I've never really kind of gotten into the whole like hometown pride. I mean, I kind of miss living in the city. I live in a small town now. But like some people are like, I came out of a pussy in Pittsburgh, and I love the Burgh, Iron City beer, and the Stillers. I
think you just described Matt Light. he's a comedian from there.
They shower in Heinz ketchup,
Yeah. We've talked to a lot of. I guess we're a magnet for Pittsburgh people. Like I was just saying, Matt Light, he's a stand-up comedian from there, and I see a shitload of pictures with him in Iron City beer. His buddy that runs what is it, From the Berg? It's a podcast where he doesn't talk to just Pittsburgh rock stars, professional wrestlers, and he talked to a Penguin player. I'm not a huge hockey fan, so I forget who it was. And then there's a bunch of other guys. I don't know what it is, but Pittsburgh has its own interesting collection of people. Who else is there? Stephanie Whiteovich.
Lawrence C. Connolly, Mike Arnzen. Who else is from there? I mean, George Romero.
Oh yeah, of course. I could be so off base here, but I want to say Gwendolyn Keist. Am I correct? Any idea about that?
I think she's from the Pittsburgh region. I don't know if she's from the city. Like I grew up, like I'm born and bred city. Like I'm not outlying neighborhoods. I grew up like almost within walking distance of downtown.
Okay.
But when you're from Western PA and you try to explain like where you're from, there's like a 70-mile radius around the city that if you're from any of that, you just say I'm from Pittsburgh. So I don't know if Gwendolyn is from like the city or if she's from like Washington County, which is southwest of Pittsburgh. But fine, we'll adopt her. She's a great writer, so we want her on our team.
Absolutely.
So we'll take her.
Yeah, you said 70 miles is the radius for Pittsburgh. I think it's about around there for Boston too, because
if you're from Massachusetts, you're from Boston. It doesn't matter. You can be from like Western Massachusetts, right on the border, and people are gonna still ask you if you parked the car in Harvard Yard.
I live in South Jersey now, real quick, and whenever anyone finds them from Massachusetts, they just tell me about how they like Boston or how they had a trip near there, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I just wanted to buy beer, but thank you. Please tell me more. So, Brandon, take over, bud.
It's funny that you bring it up because I'm only just now realizing that about 80 to 85% of the people we've had as guests are either from Pittsburgh or Australia. That's a weird demographic that we're going for there.
You are. That's like the nichiest niche you've ever niched.
Isn't it, though? Yeah. I don't know. We're going to have to branch out. Get somebody from Philadelphia or something like that. So when you guys... Oddly enough, I have a follow-up question about soda or pop. So when you guys were arguing about that, if you're going to put it in the final draft, did you guys just like scream and curse at each other until somebody won? Or did you like take where the story was happening into account? Or how did you settle that?
We never in How We Broke really specify where it was because it is very regional. You go places in the South and every carbonated beverage is Coke. Oh, you want a Coke? What kind? Pepsi. It's very weird. And I think we kind of split the difference and call it soda pop.
Oh, okay.
Or I cut it entirely. I don't know. I can't remember now. I have to look. It's been a minute since I've looked through that manuscript or that book. I mean, the book's beautiful, but after spending so long going back and forth on it, you kind of want to be like, I need some distance.
No,
I loved writing with Bracken, but I've seen that story. I saw that story so much that when we were writing or revising it, we could quote whole chunks at each other. And it's like, without opening the document. And I'm like, all right. I'm like that. Like, people are mentioning things from Standalone, and that's the new thing. It's not even out yet. And I'm like, do you have any idea how many times I've read that fucking book at this point?
Nothing against you, but Bracken, I would not want to get on his bad side. He just has to stare at you in a certain way, and it looks like he's gonna hurt you.
He does, but then he'll, like, as he's staring at you, he'll wrap you up in a warm hug, and it's the weirdest thing ever.
I've heard he gives good hugs.
He is a great hugger. You know, I've known Bracken. We met through social media because that's how you meet people now. Yep. But he was at Scares That Care in 2018. And I was so fucking excited because we had written our manuscript, but we had never actually face-to-face met. So, like, he's in the author room. He's one of the special authors. And I walk in, and I was like, Bracken! And just read and hugged him. And he was like, oh, Paul! And, like, I'm 6'2". The dude's taller than I am. Not by much, but like an inch or two. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I feel short.
I absolutely understand that. Brendan, you got a follow-up question for this? If not, I got one pertaining to this story.
Yeah, I mean, I eventually want to get to that baseline question, but I'm curious. You know, it sounds like you had a good rapport with Bracken, and that's what led to you guys wanting to write a story together. Is collaborating with anyone else something you're interested in, or is it just you got to find the relationship first and worry about the story later?
It was kind of, you know, I apparently grew balls one night, because I knew Michael Bailey. The original impetus was Michael Bailey wanted to do Chiromad 4, and I had been in Chiromad 3. And his anthology You Human, and his anthology like Quailien New. I don't know how you say it. It's French. And I'm English. I'm American. And just as provincial as that. But you had to collaborate. And he had asked me, hey, do you know who you want to collaborate with? And he and I were kind of talking back and forth, like who I would want to ask. But the one that kind of sparked my interest was Bracken, because I loved his stuff. When I was an editor, I almost bought one of his short stories for a magazine I was editing, which I'm not going to name because I'm not proud of it. It was a good magazine, but there was so much bad blood with that press. I'm glad it's dead. And I loved Mountain Home, and I loved the stuff that was on that one app that was just a story app. I forget what it's called, but it was like the story was like in camera or something like that. So I loved his work. So one night I was like, hey, what's up, man? And we had been friendly, but we had never really been tight. And I was like, would you want to write a story? And he was like, maybe. I was like, would you want to write a novella? And he was like, you have an idea? I'm like, no. But if we did and it worked out, you know, I'm pretty sure I can get us into Chiromad 4. And he hadn't been in any of the Michael Bailey anthologies because he writes more of a hard-boiled, like gritty, almost crime stuff. Like he has that crime anthology or crime collection, White Knight and Other Pawns. And he's a pretty good crime writer. So he was kind of excited about that. So we just kind of bounced an idea back and forth, and it grew out of us just like, hey, what if we had it about siblings, and what if we put it in a cabin, and we need, and it literally, that's how it grew. Like I could not tell you what was the seed of it to how we got to the actual novella to save my life. Even if I could probably dig up the conversation because it was in Messenger, but it was really just me like, why not? Because I've never collaborated with anyone before. I haven't collaborated with anyone since. I mean, Max kind of threatens it periodically. We were one time a few years back, we're joking about writing an erotic horror story called Ghost Balls about a ghost that teabags people as they sleep.
That sounds like a Booth original.
Yeah, I was like, you can tell who came up with that fucking idea. I don't know why you asked me. And then we never did it. Oddly enough.
He's probably writing it with Michael David Wilson.
Yeah, or he's doing something else with David Michael Keaton. Not yeah. Michael Keaton. He's doing it with Batman.
The greatest Batman.
He was pretty good, although Kevin Conroy is right up there.
There you go.
But hey, man. It was ridiculously easy because he's an outliner and I'm not. Like when he's writing a novel, I've since learned is he'll like do character profiles, like almost like D&D profiles on his characters, and he'll find an actor's face or a person's face that kind of fits how he pictures it. And I am like, fuck it. What's the what if? Let's figure it out. And I write myself into a lot of corners that way. But he's not. So the gimmick we kind of figured out to kind of has a happy medium like soda and pop was the story is told through a series of Polaroids. They set like they act as the thematic shift of whatever scene we're writing. So we came up with 10 photographs, captions, descriptions, and then we just wrote scenes backing that up, telling a full story. It's a story of two siblings, a brother and a sister, if you haven't read it. And then that's how we figured it out. So we figured out the story beforehand. And it was the easiest story I've ever written, which is weird because it's the first and only collaboration I've ever done. And he had never really collaborated with anyone either. He had done something with John Bowden, like a short little flash fiction piece, I think, like a 1,500 word piece. So it was kind of a new territory for us, and maybe that was why it worked. It was so fresh, everything was new, so we were just kind of exploring. But my happiest days were when, I'd open up my email and I'd see the latest scene because I knew where he would be going and he knew where I'd be going. But it's like, what did you write? What did you write? Because I want to read it and then I'm going to write the next scene.
So is that how you guys kind of went about it, scene by scene, or Polaroid by Polaroid?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I still have in one of my in my flash drive, because I keep a file of everything. I still have the original breakdown of like here's the description of the picture. Here's what's going to happen in that scene, and that's literally how we did it. And initially, the only two scenes I know for sure I am the first writer on are the first and last, just because he was going to start the story. He's like, I might start tonight. I was like, hey, can I try something? And I don't mean to I don't want to step on any toes because again, this is new for both of us. I was like, I kind of can clearly see the opening scene, and we've talked about it, but I can see it in my head. I can smell it. I can hear it. Do you mind if I take a shot at it? And he was like, all right. So I wrote the first scene. It was like 2,000 words, and I kicked it back at him. I was like, okay, does this work? He was like, this is perfect. And then he went off. And just the way it worked out is I ended up writing the very last scene. And then I was like, is this good? Did I stick the landing? He's like, yes, this is excellent. And so yeah, we just kind of kicked it back and forth. He'd write a passage, then he would send it to me. I'd go through it, and like we have certain different turns of phrase. We're fairly similar in terms of our voice, but we're different ages. We're from different areas. We have different paths, so our turns of phrase are a little different. So I would revise a little bit, write my scene, kick it back to him. He'd do the same thing to me, and then write his passage. And we keep track changes on so we could see what each other was doing, because there was always an option of like, I don't really agree with that. But I don't think there was ever an instance where he made a change and I disagreed with it, or I made a change and he disagreed with it. It was but like I said, it was the easiest thing I've ever done, which, like I said, given the fact that I've never collaborated, was fucking bizarre.
That is pretty awesome. So that was pretty much the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and we kind of already knew we had a home for it. So there was also that ease. We weren't investing all this time in something that we were doing on spec. I had been invited to it, because Michael Bailey's been my editor now for 6 years. Because I've been I was in that sci-fi horror antho Qualia New. I was in Chiral Mad 3. I was in You Human. He edited my first collection. I was in Chiral Mad 4, and now I'm going to be in Chiral Mad 5. So like, every anthology editor, even when they're very diverse and they're very good at acquiring new people and getting different voices and diverse voices, they all have like this little cadre or corral of authors are like, you got something? And luckily enough, I kind of lucked into being one of Michael Bailey's. Not to say he wouldn't say this fucking sucks, because he's come back at me with a few like, can we fix this? This doesn't work. I was like, okay, please keep paying me. But it's always nice, like John Mayberry has his own when he does guest edits. You can always kind of expect you're going to see certain people. John Joseph Adams, same thing. And Doug Morano. I don't know how to say his last name. He's a really nice guy. I met him last year. He's an awesome guy, but I never say his name. Doug Marino, like Dan Marino, just in South Dakota.
I've heard it pronounced Morano, but I don't know if that's right.
He's gonna message me. And it's like, you fucking cock. It's Morano.
That implies that he listens to this, and if he does, what's up, Doug?
Doug, I love you. Let me pitch your next project.
So I just wanted to ask you about one other anthology that you were in, which is Suspended in Dusk 2. That is, and just before you answer this, it's an impressive table of contents. A few authors on there: you, Bracken, Gwendolyn, Alan Baxter, Stephen Graham Jones, Ramsey Campbell. Did I already say that? Yeah, I already said that. Paul Tremblay. Gray Matter Press with Tony Rivera. How did that come about, man? Because that's just like tough.
The one nice thing about putting out a book is suddenly people start paying attention to you. So the original plan for Suspended in Dusk 1 was with a dead, which is now a dead press. It doesn't exist anymore. And so I knew of Simon Dwyer, knew of the anthology, but I didn't know them beyond that. I've seen them around. We're friendly on social media. And then he was supposed to do it with that company, and then they folded. And then Gray Matter and Tony Rivera and Sharon Lawson kind of swooped in and said, hey, we'll hook you up. But some authors, because there had been such a lag time, some authors dropped. And by this point, I'd put out Bones, and people were starting to be like, oh, that weird blonde sarcastic dude can write. And like literally within a few months of Bones coming out in November of 2016, I had gotten invited to like 6 things. Wow. I was like, I hadn't never gotten invited before. I was always the guy writing on spec. I'd kind of gone in with Michael Bailey, but I was always the guy writing on spec, trying to get a list of cred. So Simon had, I don't know if he came across the book or he had seen the title novella had gotten onto the preliminary list for the Stokers that year. It never made the final ballot, just got on the preliminary, which I was amazed because it wasn't voted on. That was a jury selection.
Oh, that's even better.
So, yeah, someone liked that book. I mean, I was stunned. So he was like, hey, do you want to write anything? I was like, shit, yeah. Because one, I'd been in 2 Gray Matter Press anthologies before. I'd been in Savage Beasts, where I wrote the story Crawling Back to You. And I'd been in After Death. And I can't remember the title of the story, but it was a weird future present tense story about the personal artifacts you find at the site of terrorist attacks and the psychic residue left behind there. I forgot what the title of the story, but the title of the story is, but that's like 7-8 years ago now. So being able to work with Gray Matter again, being in that anthology, because he kind of told me like Damien Jellicoe Walters is going to be in this, Stephen Graham Jones has agreed to stay in this, and I was like, excellent. So I wrote something, and I'm like, I have no idea if this is going to be something you'd like. I wrote about fucking Wendigo and a mother dealing with the trauma of a dead child.
Why'd you write about Chuck? I'm just joking.
I won't, because I knew that
Chuck Wendig, for anyone that doesn't get it.
Nightly questions to get pings on locations for what houses to stalk. He didn't care about your answers, and it wasn't even about the engagement. He wanted to stalk you. I'm not going to trash Chuck Wendig. Every Star Wars fan trashes Chuck Wendig, and Chuck Wendig is a nice enough guy, but.
Oh yeah. No, I wanted to. I didn't know when I was going to bring this up, but I listened to your Inkheist episode, and I mean this in the nicest way, but goddamn, are you very easy to talk and shit about people?
I will drop. I say it in the nicest way. Oh, dude, the only part I haven't had a chance to listen to it because my week's been fucking hell. But I remember I was talking. I didn't talk shit about Paul Tremblay. I came up with a scenario where a food podcast would be talking shit about horror writers, and I don't even know how I have to listen to the episode. But I'm like, I was thinking about it when I saw that drop. I was like, oh shit.
I think it's fun.
Yeah, I'll talk shit in a second because I've never been one. You know, if I talk shit about you, chances are I'll say it to your face because
That's good.
I'll fucking cut a bitch. But
Second time you said that, I believe you.
Let's go for the hat trick.
Yeah, right. I'll say it for another time. But being in Suspended Dust 2, I was like so happy he ended up liking it. And that was a kind of a hard one to write because I did not know exactly the kind of mood and tone with it. Like certain stories, I'll be invited to write something and I'll be like, all right, I got this. Like when I was in Max Booth's Lost Signals, I wrote a story specifically for that. And I kind of was like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Because I know Max, and I know his taste as a reader, not necessarily as a writer. Right. And so I nailed it, but I was so shaky. And then he liked it, and I was so happy to be a part of it. Bracken's story, which I think closes out the book, he read that live at Scares at Care in 2018, and I was like, "This is fucking amazing." I mean, I already had the book, obviously, but because I was in it. But I'd read his story, but he's a good reader. He gives a good performance. And I was like, so that's one of the stories I'm really happy with. It turned out really nice. It's one of the stories where you write and you feel shaky about it, and then once it comes out and you kind of get some distance, you look back and you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. All right.
When Bracken did his reading, did he move around a lot? Because I hear like the best readers, public speakers.
He did. He kind of moved like, and I say this in the nicest way possible because I am a teacher. He kind of moved like a teacher when he was reading. He was getting into his own text, and if you've read the story in Suspended in Dust 2, it's not a big slam bang story. It's kind of a quiet story. It's kind of melancholy, and the way Bracken reads, he recently did a reading for that charity anthology for the ACLU. It was posted on YouTube, so I was watching it the other day, and it took me back to like Bracken knows how to fucking read a story, especially if it's his. That fucker can read. It sounds so condescending when I said it the first way. I had to make fun of it. And so he moved around a little bit, but he was more focusing on his pitch and his pacing and his intonation so that he wasn't over dramatizing it, but he was giving it the gravitas you kind of expect. Some people move around a lot. That was last year. I met Josh Mallerman for the first time. And he did a reading from Bird Box. I think it was towards the beginning of the book. And he gets real into it. He has like music playing, and he asks the audience to like close their eyes, and he starts walking around and making noises to get to evoke like the emotion. And those readers are always fun. Like there's another writer, John Urbanchik.
Yeah.
He does Choose Your Own Doom, and he debuted it last year at Scares at Care. And it's a fun read, and it's very interactive, and those are good. But I also like those kind of readings where they focus not so much on the spectacle, trying to wow you with the visual, because most of the time they do succeed. But for when I come to a reading, I'm kind of chill. I'm kind of in a chill mood. So when I hear a reading that focuses on the language itself and lets that carry it, then it's all. Then I tend to like those more personally. You would not think it like, oh, Anderson likes the quiet, thoughtful readings, given how loud I get and how vulgar I get within 10 seconds. But I do tend to like those kinds of readings.
That's a really interesting way. I never thought of it. That's why we ask these questions. I did not think of it like that.
I have never given a reading, so I don't know what kind of reading I would give. I'd probably be dog shit. I'd read like an English teacher. I'd be like,
who wants to get stabbed tonight?
What? Yeah, who wants to get if you don't clap. Oh, shout out my pocket knife. I'm part Italian.
Yeah.
I'm 50% Italian, 50% Swedish. And when I first started teaching, I was with a colleague. He was actually one of my English teachers when I was in high school. And he's a full-blooded Pittsburgh Italian. And he was like, Paul, come here. And he was talking, and he was like, all right, what's in your pockets? I was like, what, are you fucking searching me? And he's like, no, I'm seeing something. I'm doing an experiment. And I was like, all right. Now, what I pull out is my keys, a cigarette lighter, because I was a smoker then, my cigarettes, a pocket knife, a nail clipper, like a little mini nail clipper, He's like, I fucking knew it. And I was like, what? He's like, every Italian man I've ever known carries a pocket knife, a nail clipper, and a cigarette lighter, even if they don't smoke, in their pockets. I was like, you fucking for real? He's like, yeah. Why do you carry it? I'm like, I don't know. I might need it. He's like, exactly. But I hadn't seen my pockets before I came down here. I'm tired. So I can't show you the knife I'll cut you with, bitch.
Brennan, why don't you ask the baseline question? No, I don't know how to follow that up.
Segue.
So, I mean, you're with us and you're tired tonight, and you were with Inkheist and you were tired on, I don't know when you recorded with them, but like within the last week, are you back to work now? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, we're fully.
How's that?
We've been prepping for the past 2 weeks, and then school began, and all the prepping we did was for shit. And where I am, we're hybrid, so the students essentially only come 1 day a week. So there's 1 day is A kids, which is like A through L, and then Tuesday is B kids, which is like M through Z. Wednesday is kind of like a independent study day, so you give kids like a little worksheet. They don't have to meet on camera, and then Thursday or Friday are virtual, and that's all well and good. But they decided to institute Canvas, which no one in my school knew how to use, but they gave you the option of using Google, like Google Classroom, Google Meet, which a lot of us had used before, but I live in a rural area, so I don't know if it's the network or Google or Canvas itself, but they've all been like skipping and dragging. So half the time I'll be showing kids how to do something, and they're like, I can't open it. Or today, one of the kids opened the vocab assignment, and it was made so every student would get their own copy, but somehow it had gotten switched in the loading to every student can edit. So one class just got all the answers to the vocab work we were doing. And I'm like, I don't drink.
You tried.
Yeah, I don't drink anymore, and I don't smoke anymore, but it's days like today I'm like, how strong is my resolve?
I'll tell you, I'm in the same boat as you. We just finished up today our 2 weeks of training, and we will go back hybrid on Monday. And I'm absolutely feeling in that same boat of last week's was probably not going to mean anything come Monday when kids show up. Our hybrid's a little bit different. We got kids in there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But
Yeah.
It's a different group on Monday, Tuesday than it is on Thursday, Friday. But I mean, I have been trained in the last 2 weeks in so many different Google fucking things that I didn't know existed before. I can't fit any more Google in my head. I tuned out after slides.
Oh God, I hate Google. Our tech person. What's worse is in my school, our tech person got a job in another county, so she left, and they hadn't hired a new one.
What the fuck?
So they're just having someone come over periodically from another high school, going, "Hey, you guys need anything?" And you're like, "We need everything," because the entire school's burning down. My only piece of advice to you if you're going back on Monday is, dude, give kids a lot of room and give yourself a lot of room. Like I've been teaching now. I don't know how long you've been teaching. I've been teaching for 14 years.
Yep.
This is my 14th year, and it feels like I went back to square one, because I'm not sit at my desk teacher. I move around. I climb on desks. I have a bullhorn. Some kid stupidly gave me a bullhorn a few years ago, like a full-on bullhorn, not like a little toy one, like one that you can hear in the front of the fucking school, and it's amazing.
So what grade do you teach?
I teach 9th grade.
Okay.
So and having to sit at my desk or have to divide my time between the kids who are coming in class that day versus the kids who are all virtual, because you also have that option, and it's like going back to square one. And I feel bad for anyone who's a first-year teacher starting this year. Like,
I don't know, man. That might
rough.
be easier. I'm going into year number 11, and I do music. And now the good news for me is I'm not really doing much virtual except for the kids who are full remote.
Yeah.
I'll be able to see all my kids once a week. Problem is that legally I am not allowed to sing, and we're not allowed to play instruments. So that's about 90% of my curriculum. So yeah, it'll be like
musicals.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'll let you know if I figure it out.
Yeah, good
Just
luck.
spent 2 weeks working on it.
I mean, I think about those first year teachers and like, okay, you have over a decade, I have over a decade. So we have innate bag of tricks that when something goes wrong, we can think around the corner. A first year teacher has only the training they've got as an undergrad. And you know as well as I do, that
Fucking
really
useless.
it is. It covers maybe 1/7 of what you do in any given period, you know? So like we have a first year teacher, and thank God her department, it's a social studies teacher. Thank God her department rallied around her, because like my first year I taught in Maryland for a year, and it was literally they left me to drown, because they didn't really want a bunch of them didn't really want to hire me. They wanted to give the job to the wife of one of the other teachers, who wanted to get back into the game, and the principal didn't like her, so she said no. So they just made my life a living hell. And so I didn't have a department. Thank God this one first year teacher we have has a department rallying around her. But like I said, we have that background. It's just on automatic. We know how to engage kids. We know how to get them moving and keep their attention. Usually it's with me like cutting up on something and going on a rant. And they'll be like, "What's Anderson ranting about?" Just let him go. It's kind of funny. So this week was rough.
Yeah.
Like at one time today, I was trying to share my screen so I could show kids how to do an assignment. The same assignment that in one class it just gave them all the answers for reasons I don't understand. And it wouldn't let me present, but it let my co-teacher present. So I just like, give me your computer, and we just switched computers.
Improvise, yes.
Yeah, dude, be ready to. And then
I am. I will. The last thing I'll say on this is my superiors have been super good about don't worry about holding everybody to a standard. We're all doing the best we fucking can, and to have people working with you who understand that and who aren't up your ass a mile being like, okay, you learned Google Jamboard. By the way, I did not know that existed 2 weeks ago. You learned Google Jamboard. Okay, you want me to teach you?
No.
Good, because I fucking can't.
No, dude. But so you can't play any instruments, and you can't sing, so you just show this is Spinal Tap.
There might be curse words in that. I don't think the 5-year-olds would go for that.
Oh,
More importantly, the 5-year-old parents.
You teach little ones.
I do, yeah.
Oh no.
They might not get the humor of Spinal Tap either. No, we'll just watch Annie 132 times during the school year. It'll be fine.
Watch Annie. Watch all the Disney musicals. No, you know what? Just show them the clip of when they get the tiny Stonehenge, and they'll be like, "Toy."
That is hilarious. Now I want to go watch Spinal Tap. All right.
Actually, I want to watch it now too. All right, I'm fucking out.
You guys want to break off and go watch The rest of the episode is just us watching Spinal Tap. Brilliant and fantastic. So, Paul, what I was going to ask you like 40 minutes ago, what we usually ask our guests right after Patrick does the introduction is, what got you into horror? Take it any way you like.
Yeah, I heard Max's thing. I mean, in terms of, I will go the other way, and I'll address what fears I have. Is I am terrified of heights. You cannot get me on a ladder. You can't barely get me on a step stool. I don't like heights. But when I was a kid, I was terrified of horror. My mom is a big horror junkie, or was when she was younger. I don't know if she still is. And so she wasn't like a derelict mother and not shoving me, putting me in a little chair and like, let's watch the Sorority House Massacre 3. She wasn't like that. But it was always kind of around because she grew up in Pittsburgh. Well, she grew up north of Pittsburgh in a place called Oil City. And they got the Pittsburgh channels. And when she was a kid back in the 60s, there was this show called Chiller Theater with Chilly Billy Cardill, who was the weatherman for Channel 11. He was the news reporter in the first Night of the Living Dead. So that reporter. So they got a little claim to fame. So he showed up, and they kind of schmoozed him a little bit. So when it came out, Chili Billy Cardille would be like, "Hey, I'm in this movie. It's made in Pittsburgh." So she grew up in horror. So by the time I was like 4, inadvertently I'd seen like The Fly, and I'd seen like a few Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, and I'd seen Jacob's Ladder. I remember a part of Jacob's Ladder, and like my boogeyman was Jeff Goldblum towards the end of his transformation in The Fly. And it's funny because that is now in like my top 3 favorite movies of all time. But at the time, I'd hide under my blankets, and like my belief was if I did not move, apparently the Fly was like a T-Rex in Jurassic Park. It could not see me. But around the time middle school happened, I'd gotten into reading like grown-up books. I still think of them as grown-up books. I was like reading like John Grisham and shit because I wanted to see a time kill. So I was like 13 at the time. This is 96. And I run out of things. So she's like, "Why don't you read The Talisman?" I was like, "I don't do horror. No." And she's like, "It's more fantasy. You'll like it." And to be fair, it's like my favorite book of all time now. And that's actually kind of how it started. And then I realized that Stephen King had written like The Body, which became Stand By Me. And I'd always liked The Dead Zone, which isn't really that scary. At the end, it's not. It's more of a political thriller. And it was a slow acclimation from there. So that's, so around the time I was in middle school is when I kind of fell in love with horror. And then I became the kid who, like, before he could learn how to drive, would, Saturday nights his mom would go play cards with her friends, and I'd hit the movie store and rent a bunch of horror movies like Street Trash and They Live and Zombie Rednecks, or Redneck Zombies, I think it was called. Terrible cover. Or The Stuff, or I'd rent movies like that, get a bunch of Dr. Pepper that was in no way enhanced by other fluids, and just like watch movies like all night, and that's what I did. And now I'm this broken shell of a man.
Did you ever have a group of friends to watch it with? Because for me, anyways, it was weird. My mom wasn't into horror, but like I'd either watch them with her because that was her way of spending time with her preteen and then teenager son, oldest son, and then I kind of just started buying them, hunting down all the Friday the 13th at Circuit City. Believe it or not, then closed down, at least on the East Coast, video store called Suncoast Videos.
Oh, dude, Suncoast! I remember Suncoast.
It was that or Circuit City for some reason that only had copies, certain copies of slashers and series that I liked.
Yeah.
But I'd watch them by myself because I didn't really have any friends that were into horror. Were you in that similar boat?
No, I mean, yeah, actually. My mom liked horror, but I didn't like watching movies with her because inevitably, like, while violence doesn't make me go skishy around my parents, like, anytime there's tits in a movie and you're like, my mother has tits, and it just gets awkward. Because then you have to inevitably think about your mother's tits, and you don't want to.
Nope, thank you.
And now Brendan is taking a drink. He's like, I need to black out now.
I just like your last little disclaimer there. Oh, and you don't want to. That is wrong.
It is wrong. Unless you are in Alabama, and then it's just a Tuesday night.
I think we have anyone in Alabama listening. Thank God.
Not anymore.
Fuck them. But in any event, so no, I really didn't have anyone to watch movies with. My wife, I met my wife in high school. We weren't like high school sweeties. We just became friends in high school, and she to this day is not much of a horror fan. She likes certain movies, like she'll watch The Thing with me, and she likes The Fly because her thing is she hates jump scares. So she hates all the paranormal activities. She while I've been trying to get her to sit down and watch Get Out, it's just we have such busy schedules that when we sit down and watch a movie, we're like, let's just watch Tucker and Dale vs. Evil again. We're like, all right. Or Shaun the Dead. Yeah. So I kind of just watched them on my own. And in high school, I fit into like 3 different groups, sort of, and I was not really a member of any of them. I was the kid who liked horror, who looked like he was going to shoot up his school, which in the age of Columbine was not something you want to be labeled as. I was the punk rock kid because for some reason, I decided in my junior year I needed to have, like, at Walmart, they used to sell Dickies, like, work jumpsuits.
Yeah.
And I decided I just needed to have one. And I would just wear it to school, and they're like, "Are you in Votech?" I'm like, "No. Why would you think that?"
Can I put a bookmark right here, because I think this would pique your interest too, Paul.
What's up?
You're a Kevin Smith fan, I believe, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I saw him live.
So, very jealous. So that was one of the things that I took away from when I moved to Jersey. It's not near where he lived, but I was like, hey, Jersey. But anyways, for some reason, the what do you call them? The long shorts he wears when
what's it? The jorts.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
jean
jorts. Yeah, when I got to a certain age in like my late teens, early 20s, I was like, that's my look. I don't know why. It's the worst decision, but I got a lot of them, and I don't like them.
I had a friend who dressed like that. It was a Kevin Smith look before Kevin Smith was like, because I remember my friend Jason in like third grade. It's all he would wear. He'd wear like the big jerseys, which Kevin Smith kind of wears now when he was kind of, or before when he was getting kind of big, and the jorts. That's all he would wear all summer and all winter in Pittsburgh, which used to be really fucking cold. Me, I still wear the kind of the grungiest clothes imaginable, and we bought the house we're renting, and we got a realtor to kind of broker the deal. And so she would come over after I was done with work, so I'd get in the regular clothes and just be chilling out. And she never said anything about it. But one day she had me come by the office and sign paperwork, and her office was right by the high school. So I have my tie, I'm fully decked out. I was wearing black that day because I like wearing black, obviously. And
he's currently wearing black for all audio listeners.
Right now I'm actually wearing like a dark gray, but whatever. I'm also in the shorts that are falling apart that I don't wear outside the house. Because if you see me outside the house, I'm wearing jeans. And I roll up in like this dark black suit, and and everyone in the office kind of fucking stopped and went, "Who are you?" I was like, I'm Paul Anderson. I'm here to sign some papers with Charlotte, who was my realtor. And I go into the conference room where she was waiting for me, and she stops and she was like, I've never seen you dressed like this. And I'm like, what the fuck do you think I dress like in front of students? Do you think I'm wearing pajama pants and like Bigfoot slippers? The fuck? I found it amusing, but I was also a little insulted. I'm like, I know I dressed like a 1996 hobo, but still.
I like basketball shorts. So sorry, before I really interrupted, you said you went to Walmart to buy the Dickies, and then do you remember where that was going?
No,
it's just you dressed up like a serial killer.
I dressed up apparently like Michael Myers before I even saw the full series of Halloween. I just didn't have the William Shatner mask, but I was just one of those kids who just didn't give a fuck. I fit in with the punk rock kind of DIY scene, which didn't really exist in my school, and I oddly enough was in video productions a lot. So I would go off and do film things mostly to get out of class, which is ironic now that I'm a teacher.
That is funny.
But
I feel like high school you would have gotten along with high school Todd Kiesling for some reason.
Probably. I was the kid. Well, I was a weird kind of like asshole. I was good at school, but I just had no patience for it. So I would walk out of class and then walk into and at 17, I'd walk into the teacher's lounge, get a cup of coffee. And there'd be a security guard in there, be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm getting coffee." "Are you a teacher?" I'm like, "No." And then I'd walk out with my coffee. Or I'd skip psychology and sit on the loading dock and smoke cigarettes and do my math homework. I didn't want to go to psychology, and I didn't want to go to class, but I had work to do. I just wanted a cigarette and be left alone. And that'd be the kind of kid I was. Like, I skipped class all the time, but usually it's because I needed to go finish homework or something. I was a weird asshole. And I knew the answers to things, so I had a history teacher who did not like her job, and I don't think she lasted beyond 2 or 3 years. And she would say something wrong, and I'd climb on death and be like, "No, that is not it. I will cite the goddamn source." And then I'd get more coffee. I wasn't the kid who the kids you see in high school are going nowhere, but I wasn't one of those kids who looked like they were going somewhere either. I was the crossroads kid.
So did you approach it with an attitude of like, well, you know what? I'm going to go into this profession because, God damn it, I can do it better.
No, it was oddly enough, I wanted to be a teacher for years. I even back then I kind of wanted to be a teacher. I just this is kind of a criticism of myself. I'm just an asshole actually. And I don't it's not that I can do it better. It's like I'm going to do it my way because I want to. Because fuck you, I'm me, which is not really a good way of interacting with that's a really bad interpersonal trait to have. I guess it works as an authority figure, and it also works as an anti-authority figure, which I was in high school. But no, teaching is something I just always wanted to do. Teaching and writing were the two things I was like, okay, I want to be a teacher and a writer. In ninth grade, we had to write a career paper. It was a graduation requirement. You write a career paper in your freshman year. You write a senior persuasive paper in your senior year. And my ninth grade paper was being a teacher and a writer. That's what I researched, and oddly enough, that's what I became.
Wow. I wanted to be a teacher too. I don't think Brennan does. My dad and brother are, but you had to take morning courses, and I got a full-time job that would probably cause me a lot of headaches if I said, hey, I gotta quit.
Yeah, I understand.
That bank wants your mortgage, dude.
Yeah. So let's dive into standalone. Brendan, you wanna ask first before I take over?
No, I'm gonna make him give the synopsis so that I don't spoil the fuck out of it. So go ahead, give us the synopsis.
All right, standalone. How do I phrase this? Because people are really good at comparing it. I've seen a few early reviews, and Max Booth has given some early plot points that say it way better than I could. I'm terrible at elevator pitches.
He tried to fight with Stephen King online for you.
Oh yeah, saw that. Standalone is a slasher science fiction story where the slasher killers of urban legend jump from one Earth to another, all and slaughter dozens of people, all in the means of maintaining the universe. They're both they're simultaneously the heroes and the villains of the world, of the universe, and they maintain the balance of all of creation. But now something is hunting them down, and if our heroes / villains don't figure it out, all of creation will perish.
Now, when I first saw that, I just, because again, the first thing that I saw that I remember about this book was Stephen King made a post about wanting to but never will write a book in the point of view of Jason Voorhees, where he dies over and over and comes back to life, and Max Booth said, Paul Michael Anderson already wrote that book. And I thought he literally meant Jason Voorhees, but you do reference because a girl's wearing a Camp Crystal Lake shirt.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I don't throw too many Easter eggs into the story because I don't want to be a wink and a nod. I don't want the winks and the nods to distract from the story. But I threw a few Easter eggs, like the Camp Crystal Lake shirt. One of the kill set pieces I literally lifted from one of the Friday the 13th is where a guy, Jason takes a kid in a sleeping bag and just slams the kid's head into the trunk of a tree. Yeah. And I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I just put that in my story. I was like, that's neat. But I try to avoid too many Easter eggs.
Well,
I save the Easter eggs for the cards.
Yeah, we'll get to that too. But the way it starts out with chapter 1, I'm like, that's everything I want in a slasher. I love it. And then, just trying to think without spoilers, I wanted to highlight a few lines, but it talked about the multiverse, and I thought that might ruin it. But now I'm kicking myself in the ass for not doing that because you just mentioned it, and it's in the synopsis.
That's why I pawned it off. When I take on a book, I really like to start it without knowing too much about it. I think that's kind of the most fun way to go into it. Yeah. And, approaching yours, basically just knowing it was, hearing it was a slasher that was very, very different than any anything else I would have read before. I loved how like the tone of chapter 1 was just, it's, you know, it's a slasher, it's a gore fest, but there's just like something's off. I mean, multiple things are off. Something's just a little bit weird. And then by the time you dive into chapter 2, it's like, I didn't expect that. Okay, cool.
I mean, that was kind of deliberate. I mean, I had the idea years ago. I wrote the story last year. Yeah, I wrote the story last year. It was the first story I wrote after I quit smoking for good. But I'd had the idea for last year because I one of my favorite movies, and I'm on another podcast raving about it. It's called Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I love that movie.
Why don't you plug that podcast?
Necronomid.com with Donald and James. Basically, you take a movie and you kind of critically analyze it from a certain angle. And I did it from social responsibility. Because the premise of it, you haven't seen Behind the Mask, is that this group of graduate students want to make a documentary about a killer, a would-be slasher killer who wants to become famous. Because in this world, Freddy, Jason, Michael, Chucky, they're real people that have done these horrific crimes. They've just built this mystique where they're dreams warriors and immortal demons and stuff like that. And I love that idea. But even in that movie, they made Leslie Vernon either really charming or they went full villain. And I'm like, can you do both? And so I was like, I asked Matt, I remember asking Max at one point in Messenger, have you ever seen something like this before? And then I asked Bracken, and he was like, no. And who are you? Because this is before we worked together. No, he didn't say who are you. He probably was thinking it, though. And so I just kind of sat on it. And then last year, I was like, fuck, let's write that. Because I have kind of like that opening chapter I had. The first scene of him just going through on a mission was kind of set in my head. And then as I went along, the weirder it got was me figuring out how to make it all make sense. Literally, I initially had a really grounded story that became really big and weird because it was the only way I could maintain an interior logic to the story. Like, because Freddy Krueger, by the end of the series of movies, he's almost like an anti-hero where you root for him. And which is a really disturbing thing to think about because the dude's a child murderer and hinted at being a child molester. And here people are rooting for him like, yeah, Freddy, and there are kids in Freddy pajamas. That's something that fucking happened. And I'm like, that's not quite right. But so I wanted to make the villains the heroes of the story, but still be villains, which means I have to make them empathetic but still awful. But then I had to have villains that were empathetic, like you would understand why they would be going against these killers. And it was a hard balancing act. It was a weird balancing act. Like I said at the top of this, how We Broke was the easiest thing I've ever written, one of the easiest things. This was one of the hardest because I kept going, well, wait a minute. How would this work? And so there was a lot of like in my head thinking about it.
I was gonna say, did you end up doing a lot of like rewriting to kind of find that characterization, or was it just a lot of stopping and thinking?
It wasn't even characterization. I knew who I wanted my characters to be. It was how I wanted to put it off because, like, you know, the story has a certain pacing and the violence in it. It's probably one of my gorier pieces, my more violent pieces, and I had fun writing the violence. You know, I revel in that stuff. I'm from Pittsburgh. We have Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero. So that's my home base. But, you know, I have kind of where I'm most comfortable is talking about the emotional horror. And I was like, well, okay, where can I go with that? So I knew the characters. I knew the kind of inner motivation of my main characters. Although there's the one character, I forget his name now because I haven't looked at the manuscript in a little bit, but he was the sarcastic killer. He was the one who always had a joke. And there's one line in that story I still remember. I can quote now because it's been a while. I'm kind of starting to get a little distance from it. And it's like, oh, he'll be deader than Pauly Shore's career, which when Max read it in manuscript, he went, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, I laughed at that line too.
It was a random sick burn in the middle of this story of confusion. And I was like, that's something that character would say. So the characterizations were down pat. Where I had to kind of sit and think was really with the two characters, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on them, that are introduced midway through the story in the interlude. Because except for the interlude and the coda, the book is written like a Richard Stark novel. Have either of you ever read Richard Stark?
I have not, no.
He's a crime writer, and he's the pen name of Donald Westlake, who was a kind of a goofy crime writer. But Richard Stark wrote a series of novels about a serial burglar named Parker, and it's really just they're almost formulaic. Parker pulls off a job, he gets ripped off by his partner, so this novel is a systematic means of him getting his money back. And he is almost a machine, like, where's my money? Give me my fucking money. And he'll do whatever it takes to get his money. But the way Stark wrote his novels was he wrote it in 4 parts. The first part, the third part, and the fourth part were always from Parker's perspective. And then the second part, it was written from the other character's perspective. And that's what I did in Standalone. The first, third, and fourth are all from my one character's perspective. And then I switched gears and jumped to other POVs. I knew that was going to be in. But when I got to the interlude, I debated doing one, and I debated introducing some new characters, but I realized I needed to keep it grounded. That was my thing that I struggle with, keeping everything grounded. Like, making it make sense for the reader. Because if I'm in this one character's point of view, he's not going to understand shit. So I need someone there who's integral to the plot, but I can also kind of act as an anchor for the reader and the main characters, and kind of give a little exposition without being an info dump, which is a hard juggling act. And I literally went to manuscript to submit to Max, debating whether or not I should yank that stuff out. But I ultimately didn't, obviously.
I think that works for reasons that I won't get into, because it kind of lays on the spoilers pretty heavy. But yeah. I definitely think that comes off nicely. Pat, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of echo that. I like how you did it, because it did at no point I didn't feel like you were beating us over the head. I just wanted to make a comment. I just went down to look at my limited DVD collection, because I do have Leslie Vernon Behind the Mask. I bought it when it came out, and
so good.
I don't know anyone else that talks about it. So when I saw, because I talk with James every now and then, and when I saw his post that you guys were going to talk about that, I'm really excited. I've watched it a few times. I like the behind the scenes. It's done something for the slasher subgenre that I've never seen before.
Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but I do like how it's in 2 different point of views, quite literally, where it is a documentary crew, and then it cuts to like the real thing when they find out this guy's not joking around, not in act.
I talk about that on that podcast. I haven't mentioned it here, but I always found that I was an interesting trick, because otherwise, I think it was the filmmakers realizing that, and this is something that happens in found footage all the time. Why are you still recording when bad shit happens?
Yep.
So I think in Behind the Mask, the filmmakers were like, there is no reason for them to be still carrying around a camera when Leslie Vernon's after them. Fuck it, we're going cinematic. And I like how they do it. They don't even fuck around. They kind of go, all right, fuck it, we're going cinematic. And they had that crane shot, and the music kind of rises for a second as they come down around the van when they're like, the documentary is over, which is a little hammy. Like, Vincent Price is kind of like, tone it down a bit. But I love that movie, and I've been dying for them to file. They tried getting funding for a sequel.
Oh, what? I didn't know that.
Oh, dude, and it didn't quite make it because no one knows about the movie. Either people I know have either never heard of it or they love it, because it came out in like 2006, 2008.
Yeah, around there.
2007. Yeah.
I remember I picked it up in like 2008 or 2009.
I bought it. I bought it as soon as it came out, man, because I was like, I've never heard of this. Saw it on the internet. It was probably MySpace back then. And when I saw it, I was like, this is like a 80s slasher film dissected. It's a love letter to it.
Yes.
And Brennan, I don't know if you've seen it, but basically the film crew, they see how he breaks down everything. Like, this is how I breathe slowly. I practice by being buried underground in It's like a self-contained area where they can breathe, learn how to slow their heart rate down so they seem
Sensory
dead.
deprivation tank.
Yeah, and he says he's like, how do you think Jason and Michael I'm doing air quotes, walk, and everyone else is running? Like, he covers everything. And that's why the film crew's like thinking, all right, yeah, it's some guy acting. But then he goes to a house, he's saying, you scope out all the exits, you see where they could potentially leave, you set them up. So, say there's a tree branch in a second story house, you like start hacking it so when they go on it, the branch breaks and there's no witnesses basically. And then he starts killing them, and they're like, okay, this is not fake. And then they get home.
I've talked about this on the show before, but I worked at a video store right around 2007, and that's literally the only reason that I would have missed it otherwise, is because I caught all those like straight to video releases like during that like short 2 or 3 year period where I worked there. But otherwise, yeah, you're right. It would be so easy to miss a really interesting movie like that.
Did you just say? Did you just? Sorry, Paul. Sorry for cutting you off real quick. Did you just say that you watched that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's been a while. It's been since like 2007, but yeah. Sorry, Paul. We just cut you off like 4 times. You want to talk now?
Oh no, it's funny. But I want to point out a plot. I love the movie, and it's like one of my favorite movies. But there's a massive plot hole in it. So they lose their shit when they realize he's going to kill these teenagers, right?
Yep.
Like a half hour prior in film time, not the world time, he kills Zelda Rubinstein, and they don't stop. They have no fucking reaction. You ever notice that?
I gotta go back. I don't know. I don't think I did.
I was talking about it on the podcast because they watched it so they could talk about it with me, and I had watched it like 3 times in the past month, and because I watch it pretty frequently. It's one of those movies I go back to.
Oh, that's great.
It was only when I was starting to analyze it from the angle I was going to argue, I was like, wait a minute. Why did they freak out when he killed the librarian? And suddenly I was like, oh. But it was one of those imperfections that actually kind of made the rest of the movie shine brighter for me. Like, I love that kind of stuff. I love it when I can kind of see that humans made this and it wasn't created by the Lord.
Yeah.
Immaculate. It's one of those little things that just make it seem more human. It's like when one of my other favorite movies is a movie called High Fidelity with John Cusack and Jack Black. And there's a line in it. Jack Black says, have you ever seen Evil Dead 2? And he's like, yeah, remember we had that comment about the guy making Beretta shotgun ammo off screen in the 7th century. I'm like, that isn't in Evil Dead 2. That's in Army of Darkness. But it's like those little mistakes that kind of makes me love a movie even more. Yeah. And we are so far off the subject of my book, but I don't care. I can talk movies all night.
No, that's all right, because we kind of just want to find out who is behind the book or movie. Behind the mask. Oh, god damn, I dropped it. Good catch, Brandon.
Can't fucking believe it. I can cut a bitch.
Yeah. I don't know what we were talking.
Gravitas when I say it.
Yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about before this. It does sound silly. The one character that I really liked and I wanted to know more about from Standalone was Castle. He seemed like a sad old man, and I'm curious. It just made me wonder. Yeah, if Jason and all of them do age, like, do they ever reflect on everything?
I mean, that's why. I mean, and again, I was telling Brennan this is part of the reason why the book gets so weird is that was the only way I could in my head figure out how to make sense of all the hero is villain and villain is hero kind of dynamics. And so by giving them backstories but making them legitimately evil people, it kind of just got bizarre. I was talking about this, I think it was Max, and I was like, my 2 favorite writers of all time, like they have a special spot on my bookcase where I keep their books only, are Jack Ketchum and Harlan Ellison. Mm. And Jack Ketchum and Jack and Harlan were very different writers in terms of intent, in terms of motivation, in terms of execution. Dallas wrote really gritty, like real human horror, where like Red is about nothing more than a guy trying to get justice for his dead dog, kind of thing. And he wrote almost exclusively in novels. He wrote short fiction, and I have his 2 collections. I think, well, he has like 4, but I have like 2 of his collections. Whereas Harlan wrote exclusively in the short realm, and he wrote things like Croatoan, like where all the aborted children of the world who are flushed down the toilet end up growing like the alligators in the sewer, and they've created their own civilization. And, so writing standalone was me almost trying to marry the two. So someone like Castle, there's Castle, Frank, and Pete. That's the sarcastic character's name. Pete is, I'm glad you liked him, but like it was literally just quick brushstrokes, and it wasn't like I didn't care about Castle because I knew what was going to happen to him and how he was going to interact in the story. It was just like I saw how he acted in my head. I saw how he was going to interact with the other characters, and it was just a quick, why would he be like that? And the reasons he would are the reasons I give in the novel or the novella. It's kind of a long novella. So like I'm glad you liked it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Those quick brushstrokes really breathed in life. Okay, those were the right brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Me personally, of the characters, the sarcastic one, the one who's kind of a loser and he knows it and he's kind of just riding the wave, is Pete.
Right.
I was actually kind of bummed with how he interacted in the story. Not to give spoilers. I think I dodged that bullet. Because he had such a cynical way of looking at the world, and that's very close to how I see the world a lot of the time. So he was the closest one in viewpoint to me.
Okay.
Whereas Jenkins was very close in my perspective of things. Like his reaction to various things would be my reaction to things.
Oh, okay. Brandon, what's that? I feel like you'll be able to answer this. In Game of Thrones, that character that just wants a castle. I don't know if Paul watches this. I know that you read the books.
Nope, I never read the books, never saw the show.
The character, I mean, they all want castles, man. That's
It's a Game of Thrones, and where are thrones?
No. You know who I'm talking about? He's like a mercenary, brown hair.
There's 148 people on that show. Brown hair doesn't really narrow it down.
God damn, I can't think of him off the top of my head. So, anyways,
seriously though, I'm not sure who you're getting at.
All right, fine. Let's jump to a different show. Breaking Bad. I know that what's his name? I am awful with names right now. I'm gonna cut this
Walter.
shit out. Nah, I'm just gonna cut this stuff out. I got a point to all this, by the way. Let me just timestamp this.
I believe in you.
All right. Yeah, so it's interesting because creators can't always anticipate what characters are going to be fan favorites. And I'm not saying Castle's my fan favorite, but he is the most intriguing because I know so little about him.
I mean, and that's good. Like that's kind of gives you that, because that's how we are with people in the real world. Like we don't know their entire backstory and stuff like that. My favorite character, me personally, the one I kind of enjoyed the most, again because he has kind of not a similar outlook. He has an outlook I kind of enjoy and like listening to, is Marty. I love Marty, and Marty showed up in another story.
Yeah,
it was over in Ink Heist. That's where I actually first wrote Marty. And Marty I just like talking to. Plus he smokes and I don't smoke anymore. When I miss cigarettes, I just read a scene from Marty. I'm like, oh, there he is smoking. Mentally, I'm smoking in my head.
Living vicariously through Marty.
Well, how long did you smoke for?
I smoked from the time I was 15, until I'm turning 37 on Monday. Until I was 34.
Oh, okay. And coincidentally, that is when your book releases. Or did Max plan that?
We actually planned it. When initially the game plan was, he was going to be at Scares of Care. I was doing Nikon as well. I'm always at Scares of Care. because I just kind of bomb around and hang out with people I haven't seen in a year. And I was going to do a regional con called Confluence. And then I was kind of, at the time, before everything crashed down for reasons I don't know. I don't know why nothing happened in 2020. People just wanted to hang out at their houses.
Yeah.
Look at my walls. And that was going to be like a book tour. And so we were going to debut it at like Scares of Care / Nikon. I wasn't sure because they were roughly around the same time. And then, people decided to stay home for undisclosed reasons.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, what can we do? Around this time, I was talking with Sadie Hartman at Nightworms because we had done a package. I had done a package with her once already. Mm-hmm. They did the exclusive limited edition version of How We Broke. They took it out of the anthology Chiral Mad, and Thunderstorm Books did a special limited edition of it, which bums me out because it turned out beautifully, and I wish it was still. I wish it was publicly available, except beyond to just collectors and Nightworm things. So they were like, she was kind of asking me if I knew of any cool books for the September package, and one thing led to another, and so I was like, you should go talk to Max, because I have a slasher coming out in the fall, possibly, because we hadn't really settled on anything. So when we knew the book tour kind of collapsed because of everything that happened, and Nightworms was interested, we were like, well, fuck, let's just put it out in September. And let's put it out in like the middle of the month. And what's in the middle of the month? My fucking birthday. So let's do it then. Why the hell not? And it was literally that. It was like, okay, let's just do it around there. It gave us extra time to get books to people so they could potentially blurb, like Stephen Graham Jones, Aaron Dries, Jonathan Jans. And they were appreciated because they wrote great things. Adam Caesar talked about it on his channel. So, like, they gave us more time for that, and it gave us more time to kind of go over the finer details. And I got a little extra time so I could write, like, an afterword and an introduction and shit like that to the bonus story in the book. Okay. But yeah, we kind of fell into, well, all right, our book tour sucks. We can't put it out in the summer.
Yeah.
But you know what? The story kind of takes place in the winter, at least in the one world. So fuck it. Let's put it out in the fall. We'll split the difference.
Yeah, so just so you are aware, this comes out the day your book is released. So happy birthday.
Thanks. I'm now 37. Which, as a Kevin Smith fan, Patrick, it's the 37 is in a row.
That's a lot of dicks to suck.
Man, I have to take off work. I have to get right to it.
One for every year. Like a punch in the arm, but
is that what they're calling it these days? I thought it used to be called the sword fight.
Yeah. Oh no.
I'm not sure what we're allowed to say about penises anymore without getting our, might get our dicks cut off for that.
I'm not sure why that would happen, but okay.
I don't know.
You really cut the sausage off of that joke.
It is the unit of jokes.
Okay, I'm going to take us back because this is fucking horrible.
This is all horseshit, garbage, trash dumpster stuff.
Paul, you kind of mentioned offhand attaching that story, the one thing I wished for you. So kind of two questions in one. First, what made you and or Max decide to attach that to the story? But also, that story really resonated with me, really hit me. And I feel like you must have had to have gone deep for that one. So will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the second question first. So as I said before, like finally putting out Bones Are Made to Be Broken kind of put me on the radar of a lot of people who would otherwise have never heard of me. Because it's a book. It's a solid thing. It's not like, hey, so-and-so in this anthology. I just collected all my old previous published stuff, and they got people's radar. So Eddie Generous, who runs Unnerving, he had reached out and said, hey, I dug your book. He had read Chiral Mad 3, and he liked that. And then he read Bones Are Made to Be Broken and reviewed that. And he reached out to me. He's like, would you be willing to write anything? I'll be like, can I write anything I want? Because Unnerving, it came out in issue 3. I think issue 1 was about to come out when he contacted me, or had just come out. So I did not know what kind of things he liked. He's like, yeah, generally I like blah, 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 blah. So this was in 2017. My daughter at the time was 6. And I always kind of dreaded being a parent. I never planned on being a parent. I planned on having dogs and cats. But then, we had a kid, and she's awesome. But I always worried about having a kid and being a father, because my father isn't good. Hi, Dad, if he's listening. Hope you're doing well. But one of the fears I had was the realization that I'll never be able to help her from getting hurt. Everyone has, to a greater or lesser degree, a rough childhood. Very rarely do people have the Ray Bradbury childhoods. And then there are people who have, and like I said, everyone's individual childhoods are different. Some are worse than others, of course. So it was the realization, I don't know when it occurred to me, but I'm like, this kid's going to go to school, and she's going to go out into the world, and she's going to get hurt. Emotionally, I wasn't really thinking of the physical aspect, but then I was like, well, what if that didn't happen? How could if I could stop it, would I? And so the story became a what if, and I just kind of explored through that story, and a story that was in Lost Signals, called All That You Leave Behind. Those are the two that I really delve into my parenting, me as a parent, kind of considering me as a parent, because like I said, I never planned on having kids. So I wrote that, and I kind of sent it off with a little trepidation, because I wasn't sure Eddie was going to like it. Because, again, I didn't know this guy from Adam. He kind of just reached out to me. He'd said nice things about the book, and I liked what he had done with issue 1 of Unnerving. So I was like, I wouldn't mind hitching my wagon to that train. And he loved it, and he ran with it. And that story was the first story I'd written where, like, people just started messaging me on fucking Twitter, be like, oh man, I love that story. I was like, oh, thanks, dude. I'd been on audio podcasts where they read stories and stuff like that, like The Wicked Library. I'd had Bones Are Made to Be Broken out. But it was the first story that was kind of like just off on its own in a magazine that people were like, hey, I really liked that. So that came out, and years passed, and then I wrote other things. And then when I wrote Standalone, and I knew I was going to use that character of the man in the black suit, which in Standalone is called the Presenter. He didn't have a name in the short story. When Max accepted the book, I was like, there's something about me. I always feel like, okay, to give you your money's worth, I have to kind of fill I wasn't a fat kid in school. I was kind of skinny, but I was also kind of like, I was the kid who always had a joke, because I have a trash personality. And I always feel like I have to compensate. So like, yeah, I totally was, actually. So when I was like, hey, would you like to do this? And he'd be like, yeah. And I had the story with Marty, but I hadn't put it out yet. And I always kind of get weird about putting out a story like in a book that hasn't been sold elsewhere, because I feel like it needs to prove itself. Someone else has to buy in order to be like, okay, this is good enough to be collected. It's just the way I am. Like, I kind of look at anyone who just does an all original collection. I'm kind of like, what are you doing? Why'd you do that? Did you submit those stories?
All rejects.
Yeah, I wonder. You can't help but wonder that, and that's probably unfair, and it is unfair, probably, maybe. So he was like, "Yeah, sure, we can totally do that. That's fine." And he took it in, and he read it, and he loved it. And so I wrote a little forward like, "Hey, I wanted to show you. This is the first time I've ever used a character in more than one story. So here's where else he's appeared. And if you like it, go read Unnerving, because they bought it first, and he has good taste."
Eddie Generous has a hell of a thing. That guy's a workhorse.
He is, man. Like, when he's not promoting his novellas, like with Haley Piper and stuff like that, and Mackenzie Kiera, I think that's how you say her name. He's talking about sending out rejection, or sending out stories and getting rejected or getting accepted. And I'm like, I don't write that fast anymore. And when I did, I didn't write that fast.
You know what's funny is all the people that I'm talking to now, I mean, I'm sure Brennan's not even aware. I've been rejected by most people that me and him have talked with, and I just think it's so funny because I'm sitting back, and that was from the last 5, 6, 7 years, and this is a lesson for anyone that's starting out, I suppose. But I'm just thinking, well, I never read what they put out before. They always suggest do that, and that's when I was starting to really focus on. I want to do novels and short stories, and now 7 years later, I'm like, I'm starting to get it.
There's that old chestnut of reading the market, and that's true and not, but fuck, writers are broke.
That's true. I figured they'd either like it or they wouldn't.
I mean, I'll try. One of my big gets, one of the ones I'm dying to be in is Black Static. I love Black.
Yeah.
And I buy the issues and I've read them. And I always last a while with Andy Cox. He's the editor over there, but at the end, it's just like not really his bag. What's funny is when I was an editor of a magazine, and I'd have stories on my short list, and I just would have to winnie down to like 5, and I had like 10, so 5 had to be cut. Inevitably, those stories would fucking sell to Black Static. So I know I have I'm almost positive I have the same aesthetic as what runs in Black Static, especially since I've read it, but I can't crack that nut yet. Andy, if you're listening, I love you.
Yeah, Black Static is definitely on my dream list too.
Because I love the stuff they put out. They put out really good stuff. But the few times I've actually tried to, like, I'll read the market obsessively. There was a magazine back in the early aughts, late 90s, called Flesh and Blood. And this is back in the day when you'd have to send out a self-addressed stamped envelope kind of thing. And I could never get in. And I tried writing to that market. And it's like a realization I've had the past few years. Like, I'm not a weird writer. I'm not a Jeff Vandermeer or a Kelly Link. My head just does not work that way. And so me trying to write like that would never fly. And I think I have to kind of come to terms. There are certain markets that, as much as I appreciate the stories they run, I don't write that way. And I just have to, I'll keep trying, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And it was one of the things, like I said, it's a realization of me. It's like when I actually try to write towards a market, it almost never, I always end up crashing and burning. When I just kind of boogie along to my own little beat, someone always likes it. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I was talking with someone else, and Joe Hill used to, in interviews, have an anecdote about how when he really got serious about writing weird fiction and horror fiction, one of the things he did is he took a Kelly Link story the Specialist had, and like he annotated the fuck out of it. He was breaking down why it worked and what worked about it and stuff like that. And more power to those people, because I know other people who do that. I think Richard Thomas does as well. Mm-hmm. I can't think that way. Like because I was worried that and maybe it's my English teacher thing, because I always worry about overanalyzing something to death. Are you forgetting what made the story enjoyable? Like, are you forgetting that the story is meant to be enjoyed? And I'm not really knocking it. It's like, I feel like and as an English teacher, when I was an undergrad and now getting my master's degree, I've shoveled enough bullshit to fertilize most of Texas. It's just it's part parcel with the game. But at the end of the day, I read because I want to be entertained. And so I write, I'll throw subtext in there, and I'll throw a little theme in there, and I'll throw some emotional pathos in there. But at the end of the day, I want you to be entertained. And so I always feel like if I'm writing too much to try to get into one market or another, I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to be doing, is entertaining a reader. Right. Even if I make that reader fucking cry, which I've done a few times, proudly. One person beta read the story I referenced on All That You Leave Behind, and I made her cry in a Starbucks. Like, she just burst into tears, had to run to the restroom. And she messaged me, like, immediately after and called me an asshole. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Laurel Hightower did that terrible.
To me. I love that stuff. Yeah. But that was me plumbing my own kind of emotional fears there. But also keep in mind that I'm trying to entertain the fuck out of you as well. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely fair, and that's hilarious. She ran into the bathroom and cried. I I don't know if you heard me, but I said Laurel Hightower did that to me with Whispers in the Dark, her first book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Then
not
she
gonna.
hit you again with Crossroads. Yeah.
I didn't
You know
cry.
what?
During that.
I would love to garner that reaction. That's 100 times better than somebody saying, "Hey, I read your story. It's pretty good." To tell me that I elicited a visceral reaction. Um,
That's it.
whatever visceral reaction it is, maybe I made you cry, maybe I made you poop your pants. Whatever it is, I'll take it.
Yeah, right. That's the emotional payoff, and that was another weird line I was kind of doing standalone because, like I told you earlier, I was writing those violent scenes, those kill scenes with glee. I was like, how can I kill someone? It was like when George Romero used to make movies with Tom Savini, and George would call Tom and say, "Think of ways to kill people." That was literally me sitting down there, like, how am I gonna kill this motherfucker?
You were.
um,
You said that you were on in your afterword, I think it was, or the forward. I can't remember. You said you were writing that while you were on vacation, and I thought that was funny because I just so happened, without even realizing it, until I read that, I read the whole book of Standalone on vacation myself, and I was just up late at night writing, and then in the daytime, any chance I could. My mom hasn't seen the little guy for a while, so she'd be playing with him, and I'd be like, "I'm gonna go read Standalone," and I would just, I would, I would either do that or be with my boy reading all these kills, and I'm like, "This is pretty cool."
Yeah, Standalone was a weird. Like I said, it was the first thing I wrote after I quit smoking, and I chewed through so many toothpicks. And I typically write. I don't have an office. I had an office when I first thought of myself as a writer, and I didn't write shit in that space. I'm actually in a guest bedroom that for a time was going to be another office, and I was like, "Nah, fam, I'm good." Where I write is at my kitchen table, usually with my wife in the other room, like watching something on Netflix or reading a book. Usually after my daughter goes to bed. Sometimes after my wife goes to bed. And I write there. I don't mind the interruptions. I don't need my own private space. I'm not gonna go write at fucking Starbucks like a hipster or John Mayberry. Sorry, John.
I hear there's people crying there.
Wait, is that what Mayberry writes at Starbucks?
But Starbucks is used to it. They look at the prices and they taste the coffee.
Does Mayberry really write in Starbucks?
Oh, dude, when I met him, there was a regional convention called Confluence in Pittsburgh, and they asked me to help with programming one year because although they advertised themselves as a horror, sci-fi, fantasy con, they didn't know any fucking horror writers beyond me. And I'm like, this is sad. So one year they tasked me with finding horror writers that would be willing to come because they don't pay your way, but they'll give you like a free ticket of admission, which Lottie freaking dog.
Yeah.
And so I got a bunch of regional people. I got like Gary Bromback, Lucy Snyder, Tim Wagner. John Mayberry was still living in Pennsylvania at the time, so he came out. John Joseph Adams came out. Anyone else? I'm trying to think of the top. I know I'm forgetting. It's Lawrence C. Connolly came out, but he was Pittsburgh. Michael Lawrence's Pittsburgh, so he came anyway.
Wagner's from Pittsburgh?
Who was?
Tim Wagner? He's from Pittsburgh?
No, he's from Ohio. I think he's from Columbus.
Oh, so you don't like him?
Yeah, fuck him. No. Tim's all right. Gary's my boy. I love Gary. Gary Bromback's one of my favorite people, actually. But anyway, so we're at this con, and if you've never met Jonathan Mayberry, he's like 6'5" and a big dude. And he wears the loudest fucking Hawaiian shirts I have ever seen on the planet. Like, Ray Charles would go, "Oh, dear Christ, that's loud." Like...
When we talked to Jonathan, after we spoke to him, Brendan texted me and said, you fangirled a little bit there, and I'm like, well, it's fucking Jonathan Mayberry. The dude basically runs Weird Tales, and I got a real soft spot for that magazine, which you said Black Stacks like your dream one. I'd love to be on there too, but my number one is Weird Tales because like it's just so cool.
I have an anecdote about that, so put a pin in that. So he was at this con, and he's the quietest guy for being that size. And in the middle between readings or signings or panels, he'd be like, "Hey, is there a Starbucks nearby?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, I gotta go turn. This is early on in the Joe Ledger series. I think it was like book 3 or book 4 he had to write, maybe book 5. wherever he was writing in 2012. And he would go off to Starbucks and he'd go write for like 2 hours and come up with like 6,000 words.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, no, I write at my kitchen table. But you're talking about Weird Tales. Another one from the day of self-addressed stamped envelope is when Weird Tales ran from the 80s to like the late 90s and early 2000s. And I sent them when I was first starting to submit. I was getting out of journalism. I wanted to be a freelance fiction writer. So I got out of that and I submitted to Weird Tales. And it wasn't a very good story. I can't remember the story now, but I know it wasn't good. But they sent back a 2-page rejection letter where they went through bullet for bullet. Here's why this story didn't work. And I kept it for years. I don't have it anymore because this is going back now almost 20 years. But it was like a point for point. And it was like the first feedback I'd ever gotten from someone that wasn't my mother, who always had found something to criticize, or an English teacher who was like, "Oh, this is so good. Yay." And I kept that. And I was like, I'm going to be in Weird Tales someday. And I'm still not in Weird Tales, but Weird Tales has a weird history.
Who was the editor? Do you remember?
Oh, Daryl, it's either, Daryl
Schowitzer.
Yeah, John and Daryl.
Yeah, George Schitzer. I can't say his fucking name. George
Shithers. This is going back. Shithers and Daryl Schweitzer.
Yeah, they were during the 90s and early aughts.
Yeah, and they sent me a point-for-point breakdown of why the story didn't work. And some people will be like, "Oh, that's awful." I'm like, "No, this is amazing."
Yeah, that's what every writer wants.
Yeah, and this was one of my first submissions. So like I'd ever sent that wasn't nonfiction, wasn't a column or a review or a news story. So it was everything to me. So I kept it for years. I don't have it anymore. All right. I hate to say this, guys, but I'm going to have to jump off here because my kid needs to go to bed.
Sure. Yeah, it's, you know what, Brennan, you want to, do we have a minute or we want to go?
I mean, I can hold up, but I was hoping we could wrap this up.
Yeah. No, of course. Okay. So I just want to remind everybody that the contest for Deadhead Reviews, you go on deadheadreviews.com. And submissions are open September 15th to the 30th. Max word count is 4,000 words. We got a theme for horror in Hollywood. For more details, just check it out. Brandon and I, L. Turpett, Cassie Daly, S.H. Cooper, and Rich Gerlach are going to be the judges with potentially a few others. Paul, where can people follow you?
They can find me on Twitter under the very inspired handle of P_M_Anderson, or they can find me at my website, thenothingspace.net.
Brennan, you got any final words, sir?
I do not. That's about it.
Well, Paul, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much. This is going to be out again on the day of your book release, Stand Alone. It's through Perpetual Motion. I said stand alone, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I don't know why I questioned that. Stand Alone. It is out by Perpetual Motion Machine by Lori, Michelle, and Max Booth III. Thank you for joining us, and everyone listening. I would recommend checking that book out. I had a good time reading it. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. No, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
I had a good time too. And Brennan, as always, thank you for being my co-pilot. I thought there was going to be a bye. Okay. See you later, motherfucker.
I thought you froze. So.
Nope. We're doing well still.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Take it easy. Thanks, guys.